What made you leave your job immediately? It was my second day working at Forever 21 during the holidays when I was about 20 years old. The store had hired me as a temporary floor member to help out during the busy season. My training started the week before Black Friday, so things were already pretty chaotic in the store. On my first day, the floor manager showed all of us new hires around the store. Then they had me shadow an experienced employee to learn what I would be doing. But as soon as I started shadowing them, the manager disappeared and I never saw them again. About an hour and a half into my shift, the person I was shadowing got an emergency call from their family. They had to leave for a week. I didn't know what to do, so I found another manager and explained the situation. I asked who else I could shadow. But the manager just said, "Everyone's busy, so try your best on your own. You'll be okay." I figured I would give it a shot. If you've ever shopped in the women's section at Forever 21, you know that during big sales they have lots of clothes that look almost exactly the same but with tiny differences, like 2 white cardigans that are identical except one has 4 buttons and the other has 5. And these similar items are often in totally different parts of the store. The dressing room is supposed to sort the clothes people don't buy and put them back in the right section for us to restock. But the dressing room employees were terrible at this. Half the time, the clothes they gave me didn't even belong in my section. I wasted so much time trying to find where things went before I finally realized they weren't even from my area. I'd put them back on the rack to be sorted again and move on to the next item. The next day, the store manager called me into her office. She said I was too slow and needed to speed up if I wanted to keep working there. I tried to explain that I hadn't been trained well and didn't know the store that well yet. She actually told me I should come in during my free time and memorize where everything was. For the rest of that shift, I just started putting clothes in random places. I was so frustrated. After that, I never went back for a third day. The management there was awful. I'm glad I got out of that place. Story 2. I used to have a job as a cashier at a craft store. I quit that job when I moved to a new place. A couple of years later, I needed to make some extra money, so I went back to the same store. This time, I applied for a job in the framing department instead of being a cashier. During my job interview, they promised me I would only have to be a backup cashier sometimes. I told them very clearly that I did not want to work as a cashier for whole shifts. They said that was fine. On my first day of work after being hired, my job assignment said I would be working in the framing department. But when I got there, they told me to work as a cashier instead. They said they had found someone else to work in framing. Most of my shifts would actually be as a cashier now, not in framing like I was promised. I was really annoyed that they lied to me about the job. So for the next 6 hours, I gave every single customer who came to my register a 20% discount on their whole purchase. I did that for the rest of the day. When I finished that shift, I never went back to work at that store again. I was so frustrated with them for going back on their word about what job I would be doing there. Story 3. When I was in college, I had my first internship at a place in Brazil that was like a prison for teenagers. In Brazil, the law is a little different for crimes done by adults versus teens. Teens go to a place that's supposed to help them learn better behavior. One day, I was walking across the courtyard with my internship supervisor. All of a sudden, some doctors came running toward us, waving their arms and yelling. At the same time, some officers started running from the other direction. My supervisor grabbed me and told me we needed to run back to our office right away. I found out that some of the teenage prisoners, who were as young as 12 years old, had escaped from the building they were supposed to be locked inside. A few minutes later, an officer banged on the door of our office. He yelled for everyone to get out of the building because a fire had started. Some of the teenagers had lit their mattresses on fire inside their locked rooms. I didn't quit the internship right then, but my college professor did. She wasn't even there that day when everything happened. After that, my university made me choose a different place to do my internship. I guess it was for the best. Story 4. When I was 17 years old, I had a job working with precast concrete. One day, my supervisor told me to use a ladder that was completely rusted. It looked really unsafe to me. I refused to climb up that ladder. My supervisor got angry at me and called me a pussy for not using the ladder. To try to prove me wrong, he started climbing up the ladder himself. He only made it up about 7 steps before his foot went right through one of the rusty rungs. I heard a loud snap when his foot broke the rung. Then he fell down from the ladder. It sounded like he broke his foot when it went through the ladder step. I called for an ambulance right away to come help my supervisor. After that, I just walked out to the parking lot, got in my car and left. I wasn't going to put up with that kind of unsafe work environment. Before delving into the next regrettable recap, please remember to like and subscribe if you'd like us to create more of this content. Thank you. Story 5. I once had a job at a hotel, but I only worked there for one day. The problem was that no one took the time to show me where anything was located in the hotel. Later, my boss got really angry at me for not knowing where things were. That didn't seem fair since I was new and hadn't been trained. Some hotel guests who were eating in the restaurant saw what happened. They reassured me that I was doing a good job even though it was my first day. They also said my boss was being unreasonable and rude to me. I decided to quit the job and told the manager I wouldn't be coming in for my next scheduled shift. The following day, I went back to the hotel to return my work uniform. While I was there, my supervisor came up to me and yelled at me for being late to work. I reminded her that I had already quit the day before. Then I pointed out that if I was still working there, I would actually be 5 hours early for my shift, not late. I couldn't believe how disorganized and irrational the people were who worked at that hotel. I was glad I quit after just one day. Working there would have been miserable. Story 6. I once got a job at a store that was similar to Build-A-Bear, but it wasn't a real Build-A-Bear. It was at the end of a mall that didn't get a lot of customers. When I interviewed for the job, I met the owners. They were an older married couple. They told me they had wanted to open a Chick-fil-A restaurant, but you need about $1 million to do that. So they opened this store instead. On my first day at work, there was only one other girl working with me. She didn't talk to me very much. I didn't really get any training. At one point, she went to the back of the store and I couldn't see her anymore. I was standing near the cash register, which was under a big fake mushroom that looked like it came from a storybook. A mum and her little boy came into the store and started looking at the unstuffed animal skins they could choose from. I said hello to them, then let them look around on their own. After a couple minutes, they left without buying anything. Right after they left, my co-worker came out from the back. She was holding a cordless phone. She handed me the phone and told me the owner wanted to talk to me. My boss told me that when a customer comes in the store, he wants me to walk out from under the giant mushroom to greet them. He actually said, "Come out from the mushroom," like he was annoyed. After I hung up, I asked my co-worker what that was all about. She said the owners had cameras set up all over the store. They would watch us on the cameras from their house and call the store all the time. I thought it was really weird that the owners were spying on us and telling me what to do through the cameras. I decided not to go back to that job after my first day working there. It was just too strange. Story 7. When I was 17 years old, I got a job at a fast food restaurant. During my training session, I learned some scary information about the place. It turned out that the restaurant had been robbed 3 times in just the past month. Even worse, one of the employees had been badly hurt during one of those robberies. The job was only paying me $5 an hour. This happened back in 2004 in the state of Georgia. After finding out about the robberies and the low pay, I decided the job wasn't worth it. The risk of getting robbed or injured was too high for such little money. I quit pretty much immediately after I finished my training. I didn't want to put myself in danger for a minimum wage job like that. Story 8. I applied for a job at a restaurant I loved. I'd celebrated my birthday there every year. The owner asked me to come in for a tryout. I told her I was looking at other jobs too. When I got there, they had me wash dishes for an hour. Then their regular dishwasher didn't show up. The kitchen manager asked if I could stay for the lunch rush. He said I'd get paid for the extra hours. I agreed because the kitchen staff was nice. After my shift, I filled out a time card. I told the manager I probably wouldn't be back. He understood and thanked me for helping. A couple of weeks later, I asked about my small paycheck. The manager told me to email the owner. When I did, she was very rude. She said it was just staging and that she told me I wouldn't be paid. I reminded her that I was promised pay for the extra 3 hours. She stopped answering me. I decided to be stubborn about the $40 they owed me. I contacted the state labor department. They made the owner pay me for all the hours, even the first staging hour. A few weeks later, I got my $40. I never went back to that restaurant. Looking back 2 years later, I'm glad I stood up for myself. I learned this was common in local restaurants. I hope others learn to stand up for their work rights too. The restaurant closed down a few weeks after I got paid. The owner complained on Facebook that the city's food culture had changed. But that wasn't true. The restaurant was always popular. Most people thought her bad management and mistreatment of workers had caught up with her. Story 9. My first job was at a small drive-in restaurant near my high school. This was back in 2010. I went there for my first day of work. Right away, things seemed strange. The lady in charge said I had to pay her $50 for training. She showed me around and told me I'd make $4.50 an hour as a car hop. But there was a catch with tips. All the tips went into one bucket. At the end of the night, she'd count them up. She'd keep 20% for herself. Then she'd split the rest equally among all workers. That wasn't all. She said part of our job was to clean her house. We had to do this for 4 hours, one day every week. It all felt very wrong to me. I didn't stay. I left right after she explained all these rules. When I got home, my dad was angry at first, but after I told him everything, he changed his mind. Another girl who worked there confirmed what I said. My dad agreed I made the right choice by leaving. Story 10. I started a new job at an Italian restaurant. On my very first day, I noticed 3 big problems. Problem 1, the manager told me I'd get lots of hours. He said getting shifts would be easy, but all the other workers said something different. They were having trouble getting enough hours to work. They didn't understand why the restaurant hired me. Problem 2, everyone said the manager was mean. It wasn't just the workers saying this, even the customers were saying it. Problem 3, it was my first day, but I had to teach the person training me how to do some things. This seemed backwards. The trainer should know more than me, not the other way around. Story 11. I got a job as a hostess at a chain restaurant. I was really happy about this. My last job was washing dishes, which I had to quit because of my skin problem called eczema. It hurt too much to keep doing dishes, so I showed up for my first day all dressed up to be a hostess. But when I got there, they did something surprising. They took me to the kitchen and told me to wash dishes. Their dishwasher had just quit. I couldn't believe it. This was exactly the job I'd left because it hurt my skin. I didn't want to go through that pain again. I decided right then and there that I wasn't going to stay. I left quickly. Story 12. I got a job selling Kirby vacuums. On my first day, we went to an elderly woman's house. We got in by offering a free carpet cleaning demo. The woman lived alone and was supporting her son in the hospital. My supervisor was training me. He kept pushing the woman to buy the vacuum. He wouldn't stop, even when she started crying. She was about to sign the papers to buy it. I asked her if she really wanted the vacuum. She said it was nice, but she couldn't afford it, so I took the papers away and told her not to worry. Outside, I told my supervisor I quit. He said he would have fired me anyway. I didn't care. I was glad to leave. I stayed around for 30 minutes, just playing on my phone. I wanted to make sure the supervisor left. I didn't trust him to leave the woman alone. This experience taught me a lot. It's important to treat people with respect, especially when they're vulnerable. It's also okay to quit a job if you're asked to do something that feels wrong. Story 13. I interviewed for a job as a professional marketing assistant. I thought I'd be working directly for the man who interviewed me. They offered me the job right away, which seemed great at first. When I showed up for my first day, I got a big surprise. The waiting room was full of people. It turns out they hired all of us. We weren't going to be assistants at all. The real job was selling useless stuff door to door. I didn't want to do that kind of work. It wasn't what I signed up for. So I made a quick decision. Instead of going door to door, I spent the whole day in a Starbucks. I used that time to apply for other jobs. At the end of the day, they paid me for my time. But I never went back. I knew this wasn't the right job for me. This experience taught me to be careful about job offers that seem too good to be true. It's okay to leave a job if it's very different from what you were promised. It's important to find work that matches your skills and what you want to do. Story 14. I work as a lifeguard. One day, I was training a new person for the job. After our regular work shift, we had a special training session. All the staff had to be there. In this training, we practice how to rescue people from the water. It's a very important part of being a lifeguard. We have to actually get in the pool and practice these rescues. When the new person found out we had to get in the water and do these practice rescues, she did something surprising. She just walked out. She left without saying anything. I was really confused. Being a lifeguard means you have to be ready to go in the water and save people. That's the main part of the job. I'm not sure what kind of job she thought she was signing up for. Story 15. I got hired at a well-known gift store. We agreed I'd work on Saturdays and Sundays for a total of 8 hours a week. The pay was minimum wage. This was fine with me. I planned to get another part-time job for the rest of the week. But then things got weird. The manager said I wasn't allowed to have another job. She thought it was disrespectful to her if I worked somewhere else. She said I should only work for her store. The manager told me I should be able to live on $64 a week before taxes. That's all I'd make from this job. She said I should have better control over my money. I thought this was ridiculous. There's no way anyone can live on so little money. So I decided not to show up for my first day. The manager called me. She was very angry that I didn't come to work. She said I was missing a great opportunity. Story 16. I worked as a cashier at a cafeteria. It was inside a big company in my town. The company workers were generous. They'd leave big tips, like $10 and $20 bills, in a tip bucket. But there was a problem. The cafe manager wouldn't let me have any of the tips. She said cashiers couldn't be trusted with money. Instead, she claimed she was sending all the tip money to a church in El Paso. Right away, I knew this was wrong. It didn't make sense. Why collect tips if the workers can't have them? And why send them to a faraway church? I'm pretty sure this is against the law. You can't collect money for one thing and then use it for something else without telling people. That's not honest. I decided I didn't want to work at a place that did things like this. So I just never went back to that job. Story 17. I started a new job unloading shipping containers. On my first day, the boss said we had to empty a container by noon. This was really important because a new container was coming in the early afternoon. Normally, this job needs 2 people working really hard to finish on time. But then the boss said, "Oh, by the way, your co-worker isn't here today. You need to do this all by yourself." I knew right away this was impossible. One person can't do the work of 2 people that fast. I didn't even try. I just walked out. Maybe they were testing me to see how I'd handle pressure. But I didn't care. I didn't want to work for people who'd asked for something impossible on the first day. Story 18. I went to a job interview for a security guard position. The interview was really strange. A man and a woman only asked me 2 questions, my name and how strong I was. Then they hired me on the spot and wanted me to start right away. This seemed very odd. They took me to their warehouse below the office. They told me to start moving boxes from a shelf into a truck. I was confused. I said, "Wait, I thought this was a security job, not moving boxes." They got angry and said if I wanted the job, I had to do this too. That's when I realized something was wrong. This wasn't a real job, it was a trick to get free work from people. I told them I was leaving and walked out. I was really upset. I'd missed another job interview to come here and it turned out to be fake. Story 19. I got a job selling home security systems. We had to go door to door to sell them. The job lasted only 1 day for me. The company's plan wasn't honest. We were supposed to act like we were helping people, but really we were trying to get them to sign long contracts for 5 years. On my first day, my supervisor and I went to a family's home. They didn't speak much English. The father told us they were having money problems. Even after hearing this, my supervisor kept trying to sell them the security system. It seemed like the father didn't really understand what was going on. I felt this was very wrong. These people were already struggling with money. Selling them this system would only make things worse for them. I couldn't do that to people. It didn't feel right to take advantage of someone who was already having a hard time. So I decided not to continue with this job. Story 20. I saw an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working, but not very often. I thought some extra babysitting work would be good for making more money. When I went to meet the couple who posted the ad, I got a big surprise. They were both in the military. They told me their idea of babysitting was very different from what I expected. They wanted me to live in their spare room, take care of their 6-month-old baby all day and night, do all the housework, and only have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said they'd pay me cash, but the pay was so low, they suggested I should also claim unemployment benefits to have enough money. This is against the law. I realized they didn't want a babysitter. They wanted a full-time nanny and housekeeper, but they couldn't afford to pay for one properly. I left right away. I knew this wasn't right. They were asking for way too much work and not offering enough pay, and they wanted me to break the law to make up for it. Story 21. I got a job at a gas station. On my first day, something strange happened. The manager said I had to work for free until I learned their computer systems well enough. He didn't say how long this would take. I agreed because I really needed a job. I showed up at 7 a.m. on my first day, ready to learn. But the manager wasn't there. No one was there to train me. For about an hour and a half, I just stood around. I tried to help a bit outside, but I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't learning anything about the computer systems. After waiting all this time, I realized something wasn't right. They were taking advantage of me. They wanted free work, but weren't teaching me anything. So I made a decision. I told the cashier to let the manager know I quit. I wasn't going to work for free with no training. This experience taught me that it's not okay for a job to ask you to work for free, even during training. If a company wants you to learn their systems, they should pay you and have someone there to teach you. Story 22. I was young and desperate for any job. I found one at a cheap motel in Raleigh, North Carolina. My first day was eye-opening. The night worker I was replacing told me all sorts of alarming things. She kept a bat under the counter for safety. She pointed out which rooms had prostitutes and which had regular tourists. She warned me not to give extra towels to some rooms because they were overcrowded. While she was talking, a prostitute came up and paid with money she'd kept in her bra. I learned I'd have to do laundry while also watching the front desk. They even told me to watch out for needles in the sheets. Things got even stranger. In the lobby, I overheard a man eating cheap cereal from the breakfast bar. He was on the phone talking about hiring his jailed friend to kill his cousin in the same jail. After all this, I decided to leave. I never got paid for that day, but I didn't bother trying to get the money. It just wasn't worth it. Years later, I found out they tore down that motel and built something new. That's probably for the best. Thanks for listening to these regrettable recaps. Please like and subscribe if you would like more of this content in the future. Now it's time for Today I Effed Up Stories. Story 1. I messed up telling a joke at the end of a job interview 6 years ago. It still bothers me today. I was unhappy with my job and looking for new opportunities. My mother-in-law's friend, who worked as a secretary for a successful copier company, got me an interview for a management position. I've always hated job interviews. I get more nervous for them than anything else. Wanting this job so badly made me even more anxious. On interview day, I met the owner in his office. He was in his mid-50s, easy to talk to, and relaxed. The interview went well, with him laughing and even cursing a bit. I was still nervous, but got more comfortable as we talked. Near the end, he asked, "What's your go-to icebreaker joke?" I froze. My mind went blank. I don't usually tell jokes and couldn't think of any. I felt like I might faint when I suddenly remembered a joke my wife's friend told us the previous weekend. My wife's friend Jackie is nice but often inappropriate. She curses a lot and makes sexual jokes without shame. At a baseball game once, she loudly said about an attractive guy, "I would drain his ballsack." At a kid's birthday party a few days before the interview, Jackie greeted us with this joke. "What's another term for ejaculating in a woman? Loading the dishwasher." Back in the interview, panicking and dizzy, I blurted out Jackie's joke. I never talked like that, but my brain thought it was the right move in that moment. The owner stared at me for a few seconds, looking shocked and disgusted. He just said, "Okay then, thanks for coming in." He stood up, shook my hand, and opened the door. I walked straight out of the office to my car and left. I stopped at a convenience store nearby and sat in my car, stunned. Not only did I lose a job I likely would have gotten, but I also had to face my mother-in-law, who heard about what happened from her friend. It wasn't my proudest moment. Story 2. I turned 18 and started looking for my first job. I applied to many jobs, but most required experience, even for entry-level positions like dishwashing. I found an ad saying experience preferred but not essential. I quickly applied and got the job. Having never worked before, I wasn't a good employee. On my first shift, I made mistakes with the cash register and spent too much time arranging soft drink cans perfectly in the fridge. After about an hour, the owner paid me and sent me home, saying he'd call later. When I got home, I checked online and saw the same job advertised again, but this time it said experience required. Story 3. Today I messed up by checking no, I wasn't honest on my application for a job. I'm currently looking for a job and found a great position that I thought would suit me well. I met the qualifications and there were several positions open, so I was excited and felt confident. I applied yesterday evening. This morning I received an email stating that I did not meet the minimum qualifications and my application was not passed along for further consideration. Confused, I looked at my application again and found that somehow, instead of saying yes to the question, "Are your answers truthful and honest?" and so on, I had said no. I am very upset. I have seen this question before and always say yes to myself while selecting the answer, but somehow I made a mistake and selected no. Story 4. Today, I messed up by sleeping on the job. I work as a customer service representative, answering phone calls and emails. I used to work in an office, but since the pandemic, I only work from home now. The amount of work I have to do depends on how many customers need help and how well our system is working. Today was very quiet with hardly anyone needing our help. So I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a short nap, maybe about 30 minutes. I made sure my phone line wouldn't disconnect by setting up an automatic click system on a communication tool. I turned on notifications and increased the volume so that a loud ring would wake me up if I got a call. It turned out to be a bad idea. When I woke up after about 30 minutes, I had 2 messages from my boss asking what I was doing. While I was asleep, I didn't miss any calls because there weren't any. However, I slept through messages from my co-workers asking about email inquiries. I answered their questions right away and finished my work, leaving no inquiries unanswered by the end of my shift. But my boss is still suspicious, saying I haven't been able to focus on the job and that I was away for more than an hour. This isn't true, but I was sleeping on the job. The boss says I still need to explain myself and what I was doing for an hour tomorrow morning. I guess I have to be honest and say the usual, I promise this will never happen again. Story 5. Today, I messed up by stealing from my job. This actually happened yesterday. I, a 19-year-old female, was a server at a popular corporate restaurant that is famous for pancakes. We have other things, but pancakes are what we are known for. Yesterday afternoon, one of our newer servers accidentally entered a kid's junior cheeseburger while trying to enter a different kid's meal. As the food was coming up, she caught her mistake and told the cooks, went back to fix her ticket, and so on. They pushed the kid's meal off to the side and everyone continued on about their day. About an hour later, I still saw the kid's meal sitting in what we called the window. I asked my fellow servers and the cooks if it was dead, meaning cold, throw away, cannot serve. They told me yes, so instead of throwing it away, I put it in a to-go box and put it in the fridge that we have in the service station. My plan was to bring it home to my daughter, who is 4 years old. We have been struggling lately, and this would likely be the only thing I could feed her for the day. I wrap up for the day, grab my child's burger, and catch the bus home. I greet my daughter, say goodbye to my sitter, and warm up the junior cheeseburger. I bring it to my daughter, and she is ecstatic, obviously. I leave her to her burger and Barbies and go to the living room to relax when my phone rings. It is my general manager. To make a long story shorter, she said that she saw on camera where I stole a meal and hid it in the fridge. I explained to her that not only was the food dead, but my daughter and I have been struggling extremely badly lately. She told me that is unfortunate, but nevertheless, it is corporate policy that what I did qualifies as stealing and is automatic termination. I tried to reason with her to no avail, obviously. I understand that I was wrong, but I really wish they did not fire me for it. It just puts me in a worse predicament. Whatever. I have thought about fighting it, but to whom? I did take food that was not mine, but it was going in the trash anyway. I do not get it, but clearly I messed up. Story 6. Today I messed up by not receiving job offers because I made the cardinal sin of resumes. Having been laid off for a few months, I've submitted my resumes to numerous openings with little success. Coming from years of applicable technical background with strengthening management experience, I've been told by the market my field has an extreme shortage. Abundance does not equal quality. Thinking highly of my accomplishments of the last 8 years, I was convinced finding another job wouldn't be an issue. After all, I am in my prime with much to offer. A month passes, then 2, and now 3 with nothing substantial. With very little luck, I started questioning my marketability, and that's when I stumbled on a thread discussing applicant tracking systems. This whole time, my resume had the terrible formatting of 2 columns that I thought was catchy and cool. What in the actual world? Fixing this isn't a guaranteed solution, but will drastically improve my chances. Story 7. Today, I messed up by taking a job beyond my capabilities, and I owe over $4,000. I'm a mechanic, and I mostly work on older vehicles like early 2000s and older. I was working on a 2013 Grand Caravan to replace a timing chain guide, and everything was going well until I tried to start it. The timing was slightly off, and I didn't know the sensors for the valve train had to be reset. I got it put together and tried starting. It wouldn't start. I gave it back to the customer on a tow truck and told them to take it to a different shop. The damage includes bent valves, incorrect timing, and messed up cylinder heads. I didn't take any payment, and I told them that I would cover the cost of any repairs as any honest mechanic should. but I didn't realise the extent of the damage. Now I have to make it right and pay $4,138 to get it fixed properly from a different shop. Thankfully, the customer was civil about it and will hopefully not say anything bad about me. But yeah, I messed up and now I have to pay for my mistake. Story 8. Today I messed up by asking my mum if my job would give me an anniversary bonus even if I'm not married. I, a 20-year-old female, just got hired at a gas station that has really good benefits, treats their workers well, and is overall a really good company. Some of the things I was told by my manager is that I'll get a bonus on my birthday, around the holidays, and an anniversary bonus. I was pretty excited about all of that. However, I was curious about what kind of anniversary exactly. My boyfriend also 20 years old, and I've been together for almost 5 years now. We're not married yet, but we do have the anniversary of when we first started dating. I wondered if that was going to be treated the same as if it were a wedding anniversary. I went home after work and was telling my mum all about the benefits, including the anniversary bonus thing. I asked her if my anniversary with my boyfriend counted, and she laughed and asked if I was serious. Yes, I couldn't pass up an opportunity for a bonus. My mum then started laughing so hard she was crying for at least 3 whole minutes. Turns out an anniversary bonus happens on the anniversary of when you get hired, not anything to do with your dating life. Whoops. Story 9. Today I messed up by misunderstanding a job proposal and quitting my current job as a permanent employee. This actually happened 2 days ago and it's still developing. I am working at a company where I feel completely miserable and that pays barely enough to pay rent and survive. I've been here for 3 long years. Anxiety attacks, depression, and the complete lack of hope in having a life where I don't have to struggle and skip meals to be able to pay my bills started to accumulate and push me to start sending resumes everywhere. The thing was that no one was calling even after months of applications. The paranoia starts and I slowly start to convince myself that my portfolio is bad, that I'm horrible at what I do, that I'll be stuck in this job forever, and so on. A few months go by and a friend of a friend knew what I did and asked if I was interested in an interview at her company because they had a job position opening up. I say yes, of course, send my resume and portfolio. They answer back saying they love my work and want to meet me personally for an interview. The interview itself went perfectly. I never felt so comfortable talking to someone in English, not my native language and neither the native language of the guy that interviews me. And in the end, the guy basically says, and I quote word for word, "For me, it's a yes. Now it's up to you if you want to accept this position." Of course, I said yes. The job seems amazing. The pay is more than double of what I'm currently making. It was way closer to home. Everything is perfect. Before saying goodbye, I asked him to send me by email the formal proposal just to be sure. He says, "Sure, I'll send it to you today or tomorrow," and I go back to work. The next day, and here's the mess up, I give the notice to my boss before receiving the proposal in fear of not being able to start when needed, telling that I got an awesome job proposal, but that I need to start in less than a week and a half. Everything is being arranged where I work. As I write this, I've handed my resignation letter, talked to the company owner and everything. What I did not consider is that I had to give at least 60 days of notice since I'm a permanent employee. And while I'm writing this, the HR department is to call me and tell how they will settle this up. In other words, how much money I'm going to have to pay or not make. The rest of the day of the interview goes by and nothing on the proposal. The next day I email them, sending all my information and asking for the proposal. And they say that the guy that interviewed me is going to contact me. So today he messages me, "Hey man, Brian told me that you are available at the combined date. But remember, we are still to make a decision. Did you tell your office that you are leaving?" And I say that yes, of course, I legally had to, especially to start the day that you mentioned. And he just responds with an "oh." I don't know if I misunderstood something he said or if he forgot to say something to me, but he always seemed certain that I was going to be hired, since they weren't really interviewing anyone. Also, take into consideration that the interview was really informal. I asked when they were going to make the decision, and he said today, so I guess I'll update in a few hours if I'm unemployed and potentially homeless, or if I got my dream job. Story 10. Today, I messed up when I shared the news about my job. A few days ago, I, a 19-year-old male, started working at Adult World. It's my first job ever. I shared the news with a few friends, but decided not to tell my family because I was convinced my parents would not approve of me working at a sex shop. Little did I know that my sister was involved with one of my friends without my knowledge. Eventually, my sister found out about my job. In an attempt to embarrass me, she showed up at the store while I was working. Mission accomplished. I was embarrassed. To make it worse, she acted like a customer and asked me for information about random sex toys she pretended to be interested in. I played along because the manager was watching me. For the record, siblings of the opposite sex should never touch the same intimate items, especially if there's eye contact. When my sister was done playing games, I begged her not to tell our parents. She promised. I should have stopped talking at that moment, but I had to know who told her. I made her tell me, which pressured her to admit her relationship with my friend. She got upset and left. The following day, my mum appeared in the store. Of course, my sister didn't keep her promise, probably out of spite. My mum wanted to know why she had to find out from someone else about my job. I said I didn't think she would approve. My mum said she approved, as long as I could get her a discount. I was shocked. I thought she was joking until I had to bag some of the products she actually purchased. If my dad shows up as well, since it seems to be a family thing, then I might quit my job. Story 11. Today, I messed up by misinterpreting the CEO's arm gesture in a job interview, and then locking arms with him as if we were best friends forever. This happened yesterday. The memory still makes me cringe and cry. I had a job interview with a CEO in person, despite COVID. I was super nervous, as usual, maybe even more than usual, because I really wanted this job. I tried to calm myself down, but by the time the interviewer showed up, I could literally feel my heartbeat in my throat. He, about 50 years old, male, walked down the stairs towards me in his nice suit, but stopped halfway down. I figured the interview would take place upstairs, so I got up to meet him. And as I was walking up the stairs towards him, he put his arm up and his elbow out, and my brain just sort of went, error. I suppose it could have only meant two things. It could have meant A, please take my arm, milady, so I can escort you to the room, as if we're strolling down the promenade together, or B, please give me an elbow bump, since we can't shake hands, which is really not an uncommon gesture at all in the Netherlands. So what did I do? Yes, I went with option A, and I eagerly locked arms with this strange man that I'd never met before in my life, as if saying, yes, good sir, let's go for that stroll. And then we just stood there, arm in arm, halfway up the stairs, sheepishly staring at each other. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. I just didn't know what to do next, and I don't think he'd fully understood what had happened, so neither of us moved. When he'd finally gathered his senses, he said, I meant to give you an elbow bump, after which I quickly put as much distance between us as I could and mumbled, right, yes, that makes much more sense. Because it did, let's face it. And then we had the interview. Story 12. Today, I messed up by losing a job over a Reddit post. I got a call yesterday morning from the employer I had signed a work contract with, informing me that my Reddit account had been linked with a post about falsifying information on my resume. I'm not even sure how the employer found my Reddit account, as it isn't linked to any personal email, my name, or other social media usernames. But the post they linked me to was a comment I made on a post where a user suggested people lie and fake documents on their resume to get a job. My comment was essentially saying that was a terrible idea and I would just really sell myself on the duties I've done in the resume rather than lie and fake documents. I tried explaining how I did not make the post, but rather a comment on the post basically telling people not to follow the post's advice. This wasn't acceptable to them, apparently. The recruiter and his manager I went through to get the job even went as far as to tell my future employer that the post was nothing to worry about. I guess they didn't accept that answer because I got a call later saying my offer of employment had been rescinded for embellishments on my resume. But when asking for specific examples of embellishments, they wouldn't ever give me any and just said, I have embellishments on my resume. They had encouraged me to put in a 2 weeks notice so I could start with them early as well. So now I have already quit my current job, but lost the job I was going to over a Reddit post that I didn't even make. This position would have been a $20,000 a year pay raise from my current job, and I lost it over some stupid confusion, and my Reddit account being linked to the title of a post I commented on. I had already signed all sorts of work agreements with them and had a start date. Story 13. Today I messed up by telling a customer they're bad at their job. This happened a couple of years ago, but is by far the biggest mistake I've ever made. I was working in a cinema at the time and Avengers Endgame was out. I was working the day shift in the week, so it was relatively quiet. A woman came out of her Avengers screening complaining about the sound balance. I went to check in the screen and the movie sounded normal. So I went to check the sound level on the speakers and they were all set to the normal levels. I came back and explained to the woman that all of our levels were normal. She insisted that they weren't. Now, I'm somewhat of a movie enthusiast and have noticed a trend in recent years of action films having really poor sound mixing. The dialogue is usually too quiet and the action too loud. I don't know where this trend came from, but everyone seemed to finally realise when Tenet came out and they couldn't hear a thing anyone was saying. So I said to her that that's just how Endgame sounds. That for whatever reason, the sound mixers made the dialogue too quiet, and that I find it to be a really annoying stylistic choice in modern filmmaking. The look of rage that engulfed her face cannot be described. I don't think I've ever seen someone go from 0 in 100 on the anger meter that fast. I am the sound mixer, she said. Turns out she worked at Pinewood Studios and was the person responsible for what I had just described as bad sound design to her face. She went on a whole tirade about how she knows more than me, as I just had to stand there and take it. I still stand by my belief that the sound mixing in Endgame was not good, but I never thought I'd end up saying that to the person responsible for it. Story 14. Today I messed up by getting my girlfriend a job at a company I work for. This happened years ago, but I was told to share this here. My girlfriend at the time and I were dating for almost 6 years. We were high school sweethearts and still in school. She had always struggled with keeping jobs, and since we lived together, I usually had to cover most of the bills. I was working as an assistant manager at a video game retail store. It was an easy job if you put in little effort. As my girlfriend loved video games more than I did, I had the brilliant idea to get her a job there. She's attractive, and most of our customers were men who rarely interact with women. I thought it would be easy for her to make sales. There's no way she can mess this up, I said confidently to myself. There's a policy that people in relationships can't work at the same location. No problem. We have 12 stores in our district within a 5-mile radius. I did some research and got her a job at a nearby store with a vacant position. She would be working with the head store manager of the district, indirectly one of my bosses. A few weeks in, it was going great. She was promoted faster than I had been. I didn't mind as long as she could help with the bills. Here's where I realised I messed up. My girlfriend came home with a brand new car. Considering we were living paycheck to paycheck, I was upset. She said she had been saving up, which I didn't believe. Then I started getting write-ups and customer complaints. This was unusual for me, as I was a good employee. I couldn't even figure out where these complaints were coming from. Even though my performance was still good, I started to fear for my job. As expected, I ended up getting fired. I tried to fight it, but in Texas, companies can fire anyone at any time for any reason. I was crushed. I turned to my girlfriend for support, only to find her very distant. She broke up with me days later. I had loved her for 6 years. She said she had felt this way for a while. I was heartbroken, angry, depressed, and jobless. A week later, her Facebook status showed she was in a relationship with her boss, my former boss. It turned out he had bought her the car and then got me fired. All the customer complaints about me had somehow come from that store. I had set her up to completely betray me and to get involved with my boss. I'm still a bit sad about it, but it is what it is. Edit. Perhaps the biggest mistake was not suing. I was such an emotional wreck that it didn't even cross my mind. But I'm doing pretty well for myself now, and any money I'd get wouldn't be worth taking her to court. Just the thought of seeing her gives me chills. Update. For those wondering, they dated for a few months and then broke up. Neither of them work for the company anymore. One detail I forgot to mention. When she came to take her stuff from our place, he was helping carry things to her car. That was probably the most gut-wrenching moment for me. Both of them are terrible people. Story 15. Today I messed up by talking about the poop knife non-stop during a job interview. I had a job interview today with Reddit. I was on a video call with the hiring manager, HM, and talking about normal things. I spoke about my work experience, how I handle clients, how I analyze user trends to create content strategies, all very professional. The HM then asked me to create a hypothetical content plan, what sort of Reddit-y content I would show users that best represented the website. He said to think back a month ago and consider what content Redditors would be interested in. So I started talking about interesting and topical events. I mentioned the inauguration as global news. I'd also find interesting content from a user's country or continent. And because current world events can be heavy, I'd include something light and fun, like the poop knife. As soon as I said that, the HM looked disgusted and confused. HM. The poop knife? Me. Yeah, the poop knife. While mimicking holding a knife and doing a cutting motion. HM. I don't think I know what the poop knife is, and it sounds like that's a good thing. Me. Oh yeah, definitely. It's a pretty gross story. You'd think we'd leave it at that, but no. I then explained the poop knife story in detail for 3 minutes, complete with hand actions. It felt like an out-of-body experience. I could see myself rambling and saying poop knife over and over. I was willing myself to stop talking about the poop knife, but my brain was locked onto this topic. The entire time, the HM's face got more horrified while I happily talked about users cutting up their gigantic poops. Finally, I came out of my daze. Me. So anyway, recently, users found out there was another Redditor who also had a poop knife. And everyone thought it was hilarious that 2 different people had the same poop knife idea. So, something like that. Again, while doing a limp cutting motion with my hand. I went on to talk about other content, but my brain was still stuck on the poop knife. Me. And that's what I'd do. I'd show content from a variety of sources. Something global, something local, and something funny. Like the poop knife. Again, I did the cutting motion. It was like I had no control over my body, and the spirit of the poop knife had decided to channel itself through me. I tried to move on to other topics, but the damage was done. The HM still looked utterly confused, doubtful, and disgusted, as we both said our goodbyes and tried to move past my inappropriate stories. Needless to say, I didn't get the job. Story 16. Today I messed up and rage quit my job. This happened yesterday. I was on a Zoom call waiting to give a presentation scheduled for a 15-minute slot. After 3 hours of listening to other presentations, I finally got my turn with only 5 minutes left. I started my presentation but was quickly interrupted by a committee member who clearly hadn't read the proposal or any of the previous communications about it. I tried to explain, but they kept asking for clarifications on things that had already been settled. Background: I was trying to get approval for a script to automate some internal reporting tasks. This presentation was supposed to be the final step after 83 days of back and forth. After being talked over and talked down to, I snapped. I said things that were inappropriate, rude, immature, insulting, and potentially actionable. I was shouting and cursing. No. I've been wanting to leave this job for weeks and had my resignation letter ready for a month. I was just waiting for an offer from one of the many job applications I've sent out. I had planned to finish this project, give my 2 weeks notice, and leave quietly. But instead I clicked leave meeting, queued up some emails, and went to pick up my kids from school. This move is definitely career limiting. It was selfish, short-sighted, and impulsive. I'm better than that. I'm disappointed in myself and embarrassed. I didn't sleep last night, and I've been shaking ever since the call. My heart is racing, I feel sick to my stomach, and I can't sit still. My wife isn't talking to me yet, but despite all that, it feels like the best thing I've ever done for myself. Today, I messed up by accidentally showing my employer an email confirming my new job before I gave my notice. After years of reading Tfue stories, I finally have my own to share. This morning, I accepted a job offer. It was a difficult decision because I enjoy my current job and love my co-workers, but the new position is a better fit for me. I got an email from the recruiter confirming my acceptance. Because I haven't signed a contract yet, I also haven't given my current employer my notice. It's been uncomfortable being at the office acting normal when I know I'll be leaving soon. We're a small company with a close-knit team of only 4 people, and my leaving will be unexpected and not great for the team. This afternoon, I was in a meeting with my team, including my team lead and our CEO manager. We were brainstorming design solutions and I was sharing my screen. When a coworker suggested checking something in Gmail, I logged into my personal Gmail without thinking. At the top were 2 unread emails, but below that in the read section, there was an email with the subject job offer and a preview saying, "Thank you for accepting our offer. We're glad you want to join our company." I didn't realize for 5-10 seconds, then immediately opened a new tab and tried to play it off. I'm absolutely mortified. No one let on that they saw it, but if they did, which is likely, The email preview left absolutely zero doubt about what was going on. I hope my new employer will send me the contract tomorrow, my day off, so I can sign it and give my notice first thing Monday. And apologise profusely in case my boss saw it. I really did not want them to find out like this. In the meantime, I'm trying to laugh about it because otherwise I'll spend the whole weekend cringing. So please, be amused at my misery. Story 17. Today I messed up by losing my job to a 69 joke. I worked at a restaurant that offers pickup and delivery options. Part of my job was to write order numbers on bags. I often drew little faces on numbers like 100 or anything with an 8 in it, and I guess I got carried away today. I wrote nice under order number 69, thinking it was a harmless joke that might make someone chuckle. My manager saw it and fired me on the spot. Personally, I think that was too harsh. Maybe a verbal warning or temporary probation would have been enough, but no, I got straight up fired. In the future, I will no longer do this at any job I might have and will probably try to have as little fun as possible, doing only and exactly what I'm told. Edit. Since this got a lot of attention, I'll add more info. This was actually not a bad place to work for the most part. Everyone was friendly, and the manager wasn't usually as short-tempered as he was that day. Some people have suggested it might have been the last straw, but I doubt this because I was relatively new at this job. I'd worked there long enough to be comfortable with all my duties and knew all the staff by name. I hadn't made any major mistakes until then, and the manager seemed to like me for the most part. I think he just had a burst of anger or thought I was disrespecting the company's name. Story 18. Today I messed up by lying on my resume and getting caught red-handed mid-interview for a job I was already vastly underqualified for. This happened about 7 years ago, but the memory is still painful. I was 21, just graduated and working for a professional sports franchise PSF farm system, doing fluff pieces. I met the director of scouting of the parent PSF team, who later became the interim GM. I convinced him to use him as a reference for a job at a huge national network. He actually called the COO of the media company to vouch for me. The job required proficiency in Avid, a video editing software I wasn't familiar with. I lied on my resume, claiming I had years of experience with it. During the interview, which was going well, I was asked to demonstrate my Avid skills. I panicked, couldn't operate the system, and ended up deleting an important file for that night's broadcast. I was then called into the news director's office, who tried to understand why I seemed uninterested in the job. I left the building in shame, realizing I had ruined my chances and potentially damaged the reputation of everyone who had vouched for me. For months after, I avoided friends, family, and professional contacts, feeling I had effectively ruined my broadcasting career before it even started. This serves as a cautionary tale about lying on your resume. It's just not worth it. Story 19. Today, I messed up by making a girl I like laugh so hard she ended up in hospital and I almost lost my job. There's this girl I like at work and we're good friends. We were having lunch and making ironic depression jokes. To make her laugh, I said, "Well, hey, you know what's just one letter away from sad? Dab," and did the dab. I can also cry on demand, so I stared at her stone-faced and let 2 tears fall. She found it extremely funny. She dropped to the floor, laughing hard. After about 30 seconds, she started grabbing her chest and coughing. I asked if she was okay when she began wheezing and convulsing a bit. Thinking she was having a seizure, I reached for my phone to call for help. At that exact moment, my manager walked in and saw me, a big guy, towering over this girl on the floor. I managed to stop her from getting angry by saying I thought the girl was having a seizure and I was calling 911. Luckily, I was able to explain what happened after the ambulance came. It turns out she has asthma, and my joke caused a flare-up. She was waving her arms to try to tell me to get her inhaler. Whoops!